Did I, did I start the recording? I'm so okay. Recording. Yeah, it's recording. Okay.
I take it that means we're ready to start. So, for those of you who don't know me, hey, it's Ul. I'm one of the guests brought in here to work on the 9/11 Conspiracy Power Hour, where we're going to talk about a number of the more colorful and interesting and strange conspiracy theories that followed from 9/11, and kind of get into a little bit to start with of perhaps why people are so strange about this event in relation to others. I wanted to start by talking about read a little bit from Baudrillard's simulations from 1983, talking about the Twin Towers. So, when we're talking about Baudrillard's simulation theory, this isn't to say everything is inside of a computer, it's much more along the lines of there are things that have a structure to themselves that could as well be virtual. And so the following section I found pretty interesting. Why are there two towers at New York's World Trade Center? All of Manhattan's great buildings were always happy enough to affront each other in a competitive verticality, the result of which is an architectural panorama in the image of the capitalist system. A pyramidal jungle, all the buildings attacking each other. The system profiled itself in a celebrated image that you had of New York when you arrived there by boat. This image has completely changed in the last few years. The effigy of the capitalist system is passed from the pyramid to the perforated card. Buildings are no longer obelisks, but lean one upon the other, no longer suspicious one of the other, like columns in a statistical graph. This new architecture incarnates a system that is no longer competitive, but compatible, where competition has disappeared for the benefit of the correlations. New York is the world's only city, therefore that retraces along all its history, and with prodigious fidelity and in all its scope, the actual form of the capitalistic system. It changes instantly in function to the latter. No European city does so. This architectural graphism is that of the monopoly. The two WTC towers, perfect parallelepipeds, a quarter-mile high on a square base, perfectly balanced and blind communicating vessels. The fact that there are two of them signifies the end of all competition, the end of all original reference. Paradoxically, if there were only one, the monopoly would not be incarnated, because we have seen how it stabilizes on a dual form. For the sign to be pure, it has to duplicate itself. It is the duplication of the sign which destroys its meaning. This is what Andy Warhol demonstrates also. The multiple replicas of Marilyn's face are there to show at the same time the death of the original and the end of representation. The two towers of the WTC are the visible sign of the closure of the system in a vertigo of duplication, while the other skyscrapers are each of them the original moment of a system constantly transcending itself in a perpetual crisis and self-challenge. There is a particular fascination in this reduplication. As high as they are, higher than all the others, the two towers signify nevertheless the end of verticality. They ignore the other buildings. They are not of the same race. They no longer challenge them, nor compare themselves to them. They look one into the other as into a mirror and culminate in this prestige of similitude. What they project is the idea of the model that they are one for the other, and their twin altitude presents no longer any value of transcendence. So, this to me I find very interesting is that the towers were sort of a new, surreal almost conception of what it was for a building to look like when they were first put together. This idea of just straight up two giant blocks that were taller than anything else, and their destruction as well had to be just as equally eerie. The fact that these two buildings not only existed in this particular fashion, but were destroyed in an equal fashion, would be something that would haunt people, that would be strange to them. And especially in all of the ways that it happened, you can see that with sort of Baudrillard's thinking that there's just this sort of quality that these things are products of something that's not even material, that they're built from code and reflect only each other, that people would have more detached or almost fantastical visions of what it means for them to be gone. And today, if you go to New York, there is the memorial, which is two giant holes in the world in that same square shape where they used to stand.
Hmm.
And there's a fountain as well, water that seems to be pouring infinitely into the abyss. There is no such thing truly as the simulation in the towers being gone, but there is the absence of them is almost just as strange, almost as impossible.
Hmm.
And with that, as soon as that had happened, many things started happening out there where people came up with their own explanations. And so, what I was thinking we could do is have kind of a vibes based discussion of some of those concepts and ideas that people have had over time. How's
Yeah,
that sound, buddy?
that
Yeah.
that that sounds fucking awesome. I wanted to make a comment about the last part of what you said, because it talked a little bit about like the towers are like looking at each other, and like, it's almost like they kind of had a moment there, right?
Mhm.
And the kind of vibe I was getting from like the end of it was like, I don't read, the words don't all process, but to me, like the general vibe, it was putting out more, it was kind of putting out like, you know what like a Yuri is?
Yes, yes.
It,
Oh,
it was kind of giving me like Yuri vibes, like, the Twin Towers is like a forbidden love type deal, and then they went down together. I think it's kind of
9/11
touching in
was the
that way.
homophobic attack. The Twin
Yeah,
Towers, they were two girls kissing.
exactly that. You know, Angie took the words out of my mouth right there.
yeah.
Um,
Every night the towers dreamed of running towards each other with a toast in their mouth and accidentally dropping all their books everywhere, right?
yeah, exactly.
And they were going,
I did. We were talking about this thing earlier and like discussing a little bit before we did this just as like a test. And you called it Vibe Party. You called it something very unassuming for a reason, right?
I think I was trying to think of what a good title was for it, so I just threw something on because default
Yeah.
file name wasn't doing it for me.
Hmm. But you
And
also made a comment about how you didn't want a knock at your door. And I have a prototype title that I've grabbed from your files, and I have it right here. Um,
what we
so
got?
before you called it Vibes Party, you seem to have called it hold on. You seem to have called it plans for 9/11 and ideas that I completely believe in. I also have unregistered weapons, and I'm willing to do what I can for the good of the American people. Um, and you decided to axe that title and go with something a little more unassuming.
I think yeah, it was kind of you struggle with that a lot, but ultimately what you may not know is that was actually the Google Doc template that I used. Um,
That's the
it
exact
turns
name
out
of
that
it.
they have
yeah.
that template directly available
Okay.
from the actual app store.
Yeah, they have the template available. We'll just wanted to go with, the vibe camp
Yeah.
theme.
Hmm. Jamie, can we pull up the 9/11 truther template, please? Can we get a 9/11 truther type beat here? All right.
Bin
Anyways.
Laden didn't knock down the towers.
All right.
But yeah,
Anyways,
so
sorry to
oh,
keep you guys. We can go ahead and get into it.
that's all good.
All right.
All right, so I have kind of a few different things from across time and some pros and cons to each one. So I
Hmm.
think the first one I feel like we would be remiss not to discuss if we're discussing the history of 9/11 conspiracy theory is Zeitgeist, which was
Yeah.
a classic conspiracy documentary that went around the internet um, or in
Sweet
the
marimba
mid-aughts.
music.
Yep, it was yeah, the I noted in the pros the marimba because the marimba is one of the the most remembered things about it.
That's my favorite
But
instrument.
loose change obviously was another one around this time that was very famous, but I feel like Zeitgeist created the way a lot of people would think about conspiracy theories later. Um,
Yeah.
we have basically three major chapters in the original, which is it starts from the Jesus is fake kind of angle. And so a lot of did you know that Dionysus was also born on December 25th and also rose from the dead, which is Orphic Dionysus, but doesn't matter.
Mm.
They started from that particular vision, and then they move on to a second chapter, which is about how money is fake, talking about the Federal Reserve, especially, and fiat currency, and how things are no
Yeah.
longer backed by
The
gold.
history of fractional reserve banking.
Yeah, yeah. Also, how the banks don't actually have your money. I think it even, I believe there was even a section in the original one. These days they have a recut version to remove some of their more ill-advised inclusions. But
Oh wait,
yeah,
those are the people that like keep their money in the drywall, right?
um, I think some of them definitely do at this point.
Yeah, it is
Um,
interesting. It is interesting to note, just by the way, right here, you might be thinking, these zeitgeist guys, the people who were super into this, and the people behind it, these are just probably like all right guys now, right? Like the whole like banking obsession thing, the
Yeah.
conspiracy stuff. Actually, Peter Joseph is basically a communist in all but name, and
yeah,
has been for a while. And the original loose change guy is like very, very, very pro Black Lives Matter.
yeah. It's interesting because the Zeitgeist people. So Peter Joseph, I always want to call him Peter Gabriel. But Peter Joseph, he there is what came to be called the Zeitgeist movement afterwards, where they said, well, if all of society is fake, let's make a new one. And they are actually sort of, where they, even though most of the people part of like the original Zeitgeist stuff went on to sort of become Ron Paul guys, the Zeitgeist movement itself is more of a abundance economy, post-scarcity movement. So they believe in
Yeah.
basically a world of having so many resources you don't even need to think about money.
Yeah. Um, they also do think that, like, with scarce goods, at the very least, they should be, like, rationally planned using cybernetics, akin to, like, Allende's cybersyn, or I should just say cybersyn, because, like, that's the English name anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, there was that. I believe they've flirted with like the Venus Project a bit.
Yeah.
Some of those various groups. Yeah, they're you have kind of a disconnect, I think, between what Zeitgeist, what its overall cultural impact was versus what they actually tried to do
Yeah.
later on. So they're kind of a curiosity. But I find them pretty interesting because you see a lot of this sort of, again, vision of things that could as well not exist or have no reference point. Like fiat currency
Yeah.
has, no self-reference, similar with like the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
there
the
were also,
logical the
oh, sorry.
logical conclusion of like zeitgeist style thinking of just like everything in history is fake is stuff like the new chronology, where you end up thinking that like all history pre 1600 was made up, or stuff like, the people now who, like, have you ever met like one of those stoners who's just like, yeah, man, the news, it's all movies. None of that shit that's happening is real. It's all just made up by some producers in Hollywood, and the celebrities are all probably secretly trans.
Yeah. We're doing it all on a Hollywood set. Every single tragic event in history, it's happening on Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean that's with crisis actors too. This
Mhm.
sort of vision, and
Oh,
this
they're actors. It makes
yeah.
sense.
So this theme kind of comes up again and again when thinking about 9/11 conspiracy theory is this sort of phantom world hypothesis almost.
Yeah.
Um, where Zeitgeist really kind of crumbled in its first vision is a lot of this was still hot off the heels of like NAFTA politically. So they were in the original cut of the movie. This all led up to a thesis that some form of New World Order was going to roll out an Amero to match the euro, and that your dollar
Mhm.
was going to be worthless. The new cuts of Zeitgeist do not include this, but that was really what the whole kind of thesis was leading towards. Um, there's also, I believe, in the first one, a section of people actively saying they've never paid federal income tax and encouraging people not to, if I'm remembering this correctly.
Oh, those dudes
Oh,
rock.
Cool
yeah,
as hell, honestly.
they that's the thing is the vibes the vibes were incredible. It was definitely its own
Yeah.
its own kind of interesting thing that kicked it off, and it also, I think it had a lot of crossover as well with New Atheism as a result of kind
hmm
of its cynical takes on religion and government.
I think
Yeah.
I think those guys are kind of like the coupon moms of like libertarian. They're just like,
Mhm.
yeah, just fucking save your money. Just keep it somewhere. You don't have to
Yeah,
pay as anything. Just keep coupons on you. Don't give your money to the government.
yeah,
That
they just
that's
have
just all you.
just like a giant drawer full of jewelry. Yeah. Um,
I just want to convert it all to gold. It's fine.
all right. So that's kind of our first one I thought would be good to start with.
hmm
Now for something a little different. Um, I wanted to talk about the modified time wave zero theory. So back in 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, one of the more interesting thinkers in drug culture and a good friend of like Timothy Leary and company was Terence McKenna. McKenna did a lot of drugs, and he had a lot of spiritual visions. I'm seeing the chat has an image of the man too. But McKenna, um, during one of his visions, he came to this conclusion that you could map all of history using iterations on the King Wen sequence of the I Ching. So, using Chinese divination techniques, and he put together this graph that goes up and down across time. And by picking an arbitrary date, he landed on the map hitting zero at December 21st, 2012, i.e., the end of the Mayan calendar. And this freaked him out, obviously, and it freaked a
hmm
lot of people out who played around with this program, and he came to sort of this odd conclusion that there were spikes and down points that spoke to the amount of novelty and habit in the universe, i.e., whether reality was just doing the things it normally does, or something extremely different has happened.
I also
And
want to note, by the way,
yeah,
initially, his the final date was in November 2012, but
mhm.
after he found out about the Mayan calendar, he like adjusted it a bit so that it'd end on December 21st.
Yeah, there was, like I said, it's just like an arbitrary date he started from. There is no real reason why it needed to start on the dates he picked, which is where this next version comes in, which is the idea that Time Wave Zero actually hits at 9/11. That is
Oh
the point of
shit.
most extreme where the graph becomes negative of novelty. Like it's the
hmm
last in this vision, it would basically be the last extremely novel thing that will ever happen to humanity.
Hmm.
So the the pros of this, it's a very creative idea. And I did know the next local minimum of this graph is the 1 year anniversary of Homestuck. If you move time wave 0 to 9/11, April 13th, 2010, is actually the next major bottom in the chart. So,
Mhm.
oh yes, and in the chat we have a note as well of RNG behavior changes. So the Global Consciousness project, thanks Courtney, is they're a group that basically has random number generators stationed in different parts of the world. They check the variances between them, and when things that are statistically unlikely happen, they note it. And 9/11 was a day where there was just a huge spike in sort of the anomaly graphs of
Oh.
G. So a lot of that has crossover with sort of that time wave 0 theory of like there's this sort of current of history that you can map.
Mhm.
One of the other things along those lines, by the way, was the web bot, um, which I think claimed to predict the Northeast blackout in 2003 and the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and Hurricane Katrina, and also predicted a cataclysm that would happen on the 21st of December 2012. Um, just a fun fact, the web bot is a major plot point in Subarashiki Hibi, the visual novel, aka Wonderful Everyday. Just felt I should mention that.
So do we have
Hell yeah.
so yeah, it's very creative, however, um it disrespects McKenna's shamanic history by basically the vibes were moving his hands, and it also contradicts itself by being an extremely novel idea that 9/11 was the last important thing to happen to humanity.
Oh wait, you skipped one of the pros.
Um,
You
which one?
the one of the node dates.
Oh yeah, that's the thing is that it's the 1 year anniversary of Homestuck
Yeah, yeah.
is the next node date if you look at the bottom out. So
Yeah,
We have that to look forward to. Well, what? No, it already happened. Never mind.
yeah, it happened 13 years ago already. I honestly, I
I wasn't even on the
honestly,
internet then.
I'm not sure how like valid Time Wave Zero is as an idea, but I do think that there might be something to like the December 21st, 2012 date, honestly, just based
Hmm.
on it feels like it feels like, um it feels like, December 21st, 2012 happened. Gangnam Style reached 1 billion views, saved world from being destroyed. Then 2013 was like a relatively chill year with nothing really happening. And then like obviously like kind of after that like world civilization shit itself.
Hmm. It's because we didn't have a Gangnam Style.
Yeah, we had What Does the Fox Say, but that's just
That
not going to cut it when you're facing global annihilation.
Yeah, you need like a Gangnam Style or a Harlem Shake or a fucking Everyday I'm Shuffling. You need
Hmm.
one of those. You can't have some like pussy ass like who what was that guy like wasn't he like
Movies.
from the Netherlands or something?
I think he was Swedish.
Swedish? Yeah. Have some like and he was like a fucking like talk show host too. You can't have that guy going on there and doing stuff like that. It's gotta be more sporadic. It's gotta be more spontaneous.
Yeah.
What does the Fox say was just like, oh yeah, that was gonna be big because they wanted it to be big. But Gangnam Style, that felt like something real was happening. I felt like I was a part of something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I do want to give Time Wave Zero Theory a lot of points because it sounds like a really cool title for like a video game. Um, and I think if that was a video game, it would kick ass. And also, I'm 5 years old, and I think it's really, really cool. So that gets a 10 out of 10 for me.
fantastic. All right.
So we can move on now.
The next one I have in here, I don't have a ton of notes on, but I always thought it was kind of amusing. Was so as everyone knows, like the prominent theory, among conspiracy theorists is that the towers were destroyed in a controlled demolition. That
Hmm.
famously jet fuel can't melt steel beams is the quote. Well, it kind of can. And so people started getting more creative about what it was going to take to destroy the beams. And one of the more popular theories was that extremely tiny nuclear bombs were arranged throughout the World Trade Center, and that this would explain the health issues that people had following 9/11. And
Yeah.
it's kind
Thank
of
you, Alex. I was about to say I should dub this the Umineko theory.
the positive kind of piece of this is it's more sympathetic and it's thinking about actual people, which 9/11 conspiracy theory doesn't do very often. It is, however, an extremely goofy idea, because just in general, people breathing in, you know, building vapor is not going to be
Hmm.
healthy for them, whether
Yeah.
radiation sickness.
Hmm.
Um, Angie, you have you have Umineko thoughts?
Yeah, so basically, there's one point in Umineko, as Alice mentioned. I won't spoil too much, but uh, the witch is challenging uh, our hero, Battler Ushiromiya, to explain a particular murder that seems like completely impossible. And so he wins against her because all he has to do is present an explanation of some sort, but he says, the food that they ate contained small bombs that exploded as soon as it got to their guts.
I think I kind of like that theory of just like extremely tiny explosives.
Yeah, we just had a bunch of these like Fallout style weapons that we just put down that we could just fucking like explode at any time for any reason really.
It's I'm just
Does it?
imagining someone who like is getting acupuncture and they think like tiny nukes have been inserted all throughout their
I
body.
love the idea of like, fucking. I love the idea of like
Oh,
thermonuclear cherry bombs.
you know what? I love the idea of like nuclear bomb acupuncture, where I would have like there would be like one of those little tiny plane mobiles that would go around my body, like above it, and they'd start like dropping down those little bombs, and I'd feel like little tingles, and I'd be like, "Ooh, that's interesting. It's a new feeling." Um, I was gonna say something about the nuclear blast shit. Um, Never mind. I lost it. Y'all can go ahead.
All right, so yeah, this one it's kind of short, but I find it amusing.
Yeah.
It has its own
Oh,
little niche. Yeah.
I remember I was gonna say, do they have like schematics for like, I mean, obviously not like real schematics, but theory crafting type shit. Like, do they have like, oh,
Mhm.
here's what the bombs could have been, or have they? Is it one of those theories where they just haven't figured that out yet, and they're just like, we're just gonna go with this because we like how it sounds.
It's generally I believe people have proposed certain types of like plastic explosive and different patents from the past as hypotheticals. Certainly,
Hmm.
I
though,
know there
no,
might.
yeah, certainly no one's just going around manufacturing just like nuclear semtex, but
Yeah.
that's kind of one of those things where it's speculative enough that they don't really there's not really much cause for them to be going around engineering it themselves,
Yeah.
um, for a number of reasons.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's true. So it's more of like a cope because they found out that jet fuel can melt steel beams. So they're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
actually this, and then they just like got stuck in like a fugue state or something.
Yeah, it's a sort of a strange, ambiguous place where it's you know, engineers arguing like it's Spider-Man versus Superman on the playground. Like, what are we really achieving here?
Yeah.
All right. The next one, this one's gonna be fun. I'm glad you're here, Angie. Is
Hell yes.
the occult angle. So the idea that 9/11 was a mass human sacrifice put on by occultists in throughout the government, and that you can sort of see in certain symbology, like the fact that it's Flight 93, 93 being one of the holiest numbers to Thelemites, or the fact that the falling man and the explosions look exactly like the tower from Tarot. Dovetails with a lot of older theories like Bohemian Grove, this idea of, human and child sacrifice being a huge part of the hidden American political regime. This is where 9/11 conspiracy theory kind of intersects tons of more grand, unified conspiracy theories of others. It doesn't really have there is exactly one version of this, but it comes down a lot to some of the symbology and pre-programming, as some people would call it, type things, where say you'll see like a Simpsons episode that has like references to
Sorry.
9/11 events, or people will note, oh, the top two songs that day in the charts were Enrique Iglesias' Hero and Alicia Keys' Fallen,
Or
which is
there was that one Seinfeld episode where George and Elaine just have kept talking about having to 9/11, and it wasn't exactly clear what they were talking about, but then
Mhm.
Jerry turns on the TV and Kramer is just like crashing into the Twin Towers with a flying car that he launched out of a cannon.
Yeah, there's a lot of these things that are interesting in their spookiness. Like there's not
Hmm.
a good enough explanation.
Yeah.
And we'll get to one of those in a little bit too.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, sorry for
Um,
laughing in the middle of your thing, by the way. I,
Oh,
I
fine.
started, I started hearing the occultism talk, and like I
Mhm.
was going with it, and my brain was kind of on one level, and then you just kind of threw out Simpsons episode, and it kind of rocked my world a little bit.
Yeah,
so yeah.
hit the inner
Um,
Tower of Seven in your mind.
Yeah.
I want to know. Um, Basically, there's a couple of these theories out there. The most common 9/11 occult theory is derived from a book called The Most Dangerous Book in the World, 9/11 is Mass Ritual by S.K. Bain, where he goes over, from what I've read, it, mostly just goes over a whole bunch of symbolism without, piecing together a single coherent theory from what I recall of it. Meanwhile, it itself derives from a prior theory about the JFK assassination called Ping Kill 33, which argues that the Freemasons were responsible for the assassination of JFK. I just have to note here, my grandmother, when I was a kid, was a huge fan of this book by Christian fundamentalist Gary Kah, where he called En Route to Global Occupation, which was published in, I think, the 90s, well before 9/11 actually happened. But he said that the European Freemasons are going to attack the American Freemasons somehow for being rebellious or something, or some sort of rivalry between the Grand Lodges. And
Mhm.
after 9/11 happened, Gary Kah said, "This is it. This is the big Freemasonic attack."
And I could see there's a lot of things like that, I guess. Like if you look at the Twin Towers as say being like the twin pillars of Boaz and Joachim. Like there's
Mhm.
there's ways a person could make that argument retroactively.
Yeah.
but
Like
if
that was where,
if you really
yeah,
wanted to go with the Freemasonic symbolism, that you don't destroy Boaz and Joachim, fly the plane through them. You do a cool little stunt.
yeah.
Arguably, that means that 9/11 was a failed ritual.
I kind of
Nine
that's
nine
actually
11 9/11 going on the fail blog.
yeah, because
I
I guess
also
that'd be true. It'd be a penetration to like the mystery of mysteries.
On
Um,
that note, I have to mention a theory of my own, which is the postal by Uwe Boll theory, which was that the hijackers were initially going to fly the planes into the towers, but the stupid fat Americans rushed the cockpits and just crashed them into the twin towers by accident anyway. Um, because they were trying to divert it to Boca Raton so they could have a good time.
That's my favorite theory. Is that the hijackers just wanted to fucking go to an island and chill out.
I remember that like that was with the lost Malaysian plane several years ago. There were a lot of theories about like the plane actually having landed out at Diego Garcia, and that was a whole conspiracy theory thing where someone had claimed to have hidden a phone and then posted on 4chan with a geolocation of Diego Garcia, and it drove people absolutely mad with the theorization, which is funny because
Mm.
anyone can just modify the EXIF data, but
I also want to note, by the way, just randomly, um, one of my favorite things about the occult 9/11 theory is that it postulates that the purpose of this whole ritual was mass mind control, which you really don't need the occult angle for that. You can just as easily say like a plane crashing into a huge tower is scary, and when people are scared they'll do what you want. You don't have to say, yeah, the people do what you want because there's this ritual element to it.
yeah, it's kind of strange like that, and that's one of the things I note as a con for the theory in general is occultists are, not exactly good at coordinating things, especially
Mhm.
Thelemites.
Yeah,
Thelemites,
it's
I
just
would call it,
multiplication of elements.
yeah, it's like I would call a Thelemite over happily to help me with any woodworking or metalworking projects I might have because they're the best arts and crafts people around. But they're certainly not going to be arranging on any kind of mass scale thousands of deaths engineered in this kind of coordination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you try to get a Thelemite to do just a basic operation, and they were like, "Sorry, man, I broke the fast 3 hours early because I got the munchies."
So if there is an occult operation to it, it's certainly not any of the parties mentioned. Um, or if it is, they are not very good at their own craft. Um, there's also, I would note, with the occult angle stuff, around this time, part of the whole they've been planning this forever theories was you could fold money in different ways in order to like see images of 9/11. And so there were like these weird little origami things online where it'd be like if you fold a $20 bill like this, you can see the towers burning.
I
Uh,
I saw that. I saw that a couple days ago.
yeah,
I thought
and it
that shit
was
was crazy.
yeah, it was a whole thing online. People would
Yeah.
share that, and like I remember kids in school would do it and do the money folding and be like, check it out.
I would have
Um,
so done that.
so yeah, that's the occult angle is a great one. It's truly the classic. It's where all conspiracy theories about 9/11 come together.
Hmm.
Next one is Where Did the Towers Go? Which is the title of an actual 9/11 conspiracy theory book. Um, I just I can't get over what a great title for the book it is. This part This argues that the towers were destroyed by a directed energy weapon using something known as the Hutchison effect. The Hutchison effect is this guy was sort of a garage physicist. He did like experiments in his garage, and by applying magnetic fields to things, he produced a lot of video footage that doesn't really make a ton of sense. But it's
Mm-hmm.
basically like with the right kind of field, you can turn metal to jello and like make metals like pass through each other. Um, and so the idea here is just that you can make the towers were just kind of smushed out of existence via these weapons.
So wait, they just had like a laser beam that turned it to goop.
Yeah, basically, is like so potentially like fired from a satellite or something. Um,
Oh, this
it's
dude
kind of
rocks.
it's kind of a fascinating fascinating and silly thing of and kind of returning to the theme. What you see throughout all of this is sort of truly deep like reality substitutions, or things where it's like the towers might as well not have existed at all in the minds of a lot of these people.
Yeah,
One,
like
one sorry.
the Hutchison effect stuff is kind of funny because the Hutchison effect is basically just not accepted at all by conventional science. In some ways, it reminds me a little of like back in the 1800s when people thought that magnetism was just magic and people just swallow magnets because they think it'd cure their like scurvy warts or something. Um, I would also like to note, by the way, that my grandmother, as of late, has become a devoted proponent of the directed energy weapons theory. Um, and that she has linked me to several videos over the past couple of years, trying to explain to me how the planes were actually holograms. They were digitally edited in, and there's no real footage really showing that there's a plane independently.
Yeah, that's it gets to be that's I think leads into the next one, which
Hmm.
is this is the biggest brained of all, is the holographic planes or no planes theory.
Yeah.
Um, and this one
Don't need
is
plain simple as.
this one argues that there was specialized technology that made it look like there were planes crashing into the World Trade Center buildings when there were in fact none, and that
Hmm.
these extremely elaborate holograms were designed in such a way that the moment they reached the towers were the exact same time that the explosives would go off inside it. Um,
Mm.
Now, holograms, of course, don't really work like that. You wouldn't really be able to have people photographing the event from all angles. What people do on YouTube, though, is you will often see images of when the planes enter the towers because they move at such a velocity. And this is where, this is one of the points in Pro, I guess, is the planes do move at an incredibly fast rate for the type of plane that they are. Um, and they just sort of, it looks almost like they just slip into the building.
Hmm.
And until the actual explosion happens, it's just like a knife cutting in. And so some people look at that and they say, well, there's no actual plane at all then, because if you cut it down frame by frame, looking at other people's footage, you can kind of see it through that lens.
Mm.
This is one of the 9/11 groups. I want to say it's like aviators for 9/11 Truth or pilots for 9/11 Truth. That's one of their big things is they don't think it's possible for the plane to have been going as fast as it did. Which is a very strange thing to say. There's sort of this idea that maybe like rockets were strapped to the planes is one of the alternative versions of that. Um,
Rocket shoe planes.
yeah, like that the planes had some kind of like I forget the actual technical term. It's J something for like rockets attached to planes that allow them to achieve higher velocities than normal.
Yeah.
Um, but it's still just like a so what are we doing here kind of
Mhm.
question when you add all the
Hmm.
pieces up.
One
Um,
of my favorite aspects of the no plane theory is that,
mhm,
well, first of all, there's evidence that people boarded the planes in the
mhm,
first place. So they have to explain that. And the way that
Hmm.
they typically explain that, from what I've seen, and this is what my grandmother believes, is that actually the people on the planes were diverted into a secret airfield in New Jersey where they were herded into gas chambers and then
Oh,
cremated.
oh my God.
yeah,
They're
it's
running like a mini Auschwitz in New Jersey.
which yeah, it's the
Which,
question is what do you need all of these moving parts for?
Yeah.
And it's you know,
yeah,
one
I
of
mean,
Baudrillard's other pieces he wrote was famously titled "The Gulf War Never Happened," because this is just a huge part of what he talks about is from certain perspectives, especially American perspectives, um, there is an ability to sort of erase the materiality of events by simply thinking of them in terms of their virtual and media parts. And so
Hmm.
9/11 can just be seen as a show. It's you might as well have a set. You might as well have, actors walking on and off stage for the conspiracy theorist mindset around much of this because there's no reason for you as an external observer to actually know whether or not there were people on the planes.
Yeah.
mhm.
So
It's one of
that's
those things like it because you weren't there, like, you have no clue if that should happen. So why
mhm.
should you believe it?
Yeah, and that's like Baudrillard pissed a lot of people off with the Gulf War never happened. Because people, it's very much people just reading the title
Yeah.
and not necessarily reading the book or the
Hmm.
essay.
Yeah,
But
I do have to note
mhm,
that Baudrillard's take on the Gulf War is basically identical to Bill Hicks.
mhm,
That what really was going on was just like American forces just swooping in, bombing the shit out of a place, um, incurring very, very few casualties on the American side. I remember Bill Hicks' joke was like, "We could have just won this whole." Do you mean we could have just won this whole thing with one guy? But um, but yeah, like it eventually was like the way that it was conducted for the American audience, though, was as this huge spectacle on TV. Like, you would see all this footage and everything constantly, all these American flags and everything, but it didn't reflect the reality at all. Um, it wasn't the television footage wasn't about like this fairly concise military operation on the ground. It was rather just kind of about like American firepower and like this very, very simplified narrative of good guys versus bad guys, leaving out like huge amounts of history.
yeah, it's it's one of those things where there isn't the conspiracy theorist doesn't vary that much in terms of the way things are presented in that respect is
Mhm.
so long as something is entirely immaterial to the person watching it. It can be shaped how the presenter sees fit.
Mhm.
And that is one of the biggest things I think that you can really see with 9/11 conspiracy theory is that it has that shape. I think too, like this is really kind of 9/11 conspiracy was kind of the last gasp before the social media age of conspiracy theory
Yeah.
too. And so there was a lot more effort. This is like one of the last times you see tons of effort being put into like
Yeah.
a very specific,
Like
yeah.
at this stage, at this stage, there has to be like some sort of proof, some sort of like actual explanation, rather than just like looking at an event and going, haha, like the sheeple are going to believe that this is real.
Yeah. Well, I have
Yeah, right.
one more thing I threw in, which is the possibility that Hulk Hogan did 9/11. Um, I think if we roll this tape, um, this I think is powerful evidence of his foreknowledge and intent to commit the act.
Yeah, here, let me go to my computer real quick to turn my stream off so you could do your stream.
Oh, I don't know if I have a I can pull it up, but it'll have YouTube ads.
That's fine. We could do YouTube ads.
Yeah,
It's
And
give me 1 second to I can
free
stream this.
advertisement.
I'll just get through here.
if it's all right, afterward, I want to use the dwindling amount of remaining time to give a short course on some real history around 9/11.
It's your mama's history.
All
Alright,
right.
let me turn my stream off.
Okay. And I will go ahead and do this quick. Hang on a second. Okay. And let's see. Share my screen. Here we go. All right.
Right here after this commercial message. Twin Towers, take it, Mean Gene.
This would be at this time the Slickster, Akeem, the African Dream, and the Big Boss Man. Gentlemen, is this the match you wanted all along, or are you going to continue your terrorist attacks on the Mega Powers and the defenseless Elizabeth? What do you want?
Oh, yeah, we are anxiously awaiting the presents, and they're just about on their way now. The Twin Towers, and Akeem, along with the Big Boss Man.
And they are indeed towers, McMahon. Look at the size of these two.
Huge.
All right, thank you, Vince McMahon. Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, the lovely Elizabeth. Three people working as one with one goal in mind: to defeat, or should I say demolish, the Twin Towers. Hulk Hogan, you talked about the Triangle of Love. Jesse Ventura says there's a problem. Explain.
Well, you know, Mean Gene, you get right to the heart of the matter with that question, brother. It's the love, man, that's going to supercharge the Mega Powers and tear down the Twin Towers.
This man, what were your thoughts then?
Oh yeah, Mean Gene, I can still feel the pain when that cold steel bit into Miss Elizabeth's wrist right there. And when her muscles were torn, my muscles were torn. When her bone was bruised right there, I felt the pain. Hulk Hogan felt the pain, and I can still feel the pain right now. And Hulk Hogan, that pain won't stop until the Twin Towers come crumbling down. Oh yeah, right now tonight on prime time, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, compelling
I love-
evidence, I think.
I love the mention, by the way, that Jesse Ventura says there's a problem.
Yes.
As we all know, Jesse Ventura, prominent critic of the 9/11 Commission report, which, by the way, I just want to mention. I have this right here. If you look at my camera, I'm holding up a copy of the 9/11 Commission report.
Excellent. Yeah,
Oh,
we can
yeah.
see it.
And I just want to say this is a fantastic work of complete and utter fiction. Self right next to the Bible. Um, and let me, in as short an amount of time as I can muster, precisely why. Um, First of all, back in the Nixon administration, there was this thing called Operation Garden Plot, which was like this whole plan to like round up hippies and black nationalists and immigrants in case like there was ever a serious like anti-war demonstration. There was like a lot of talk about bringing the war back home, and if that ever happened, the Nixon administration wanted to detain everybody in camps who would participate. This got scrapped. This got shelved for a bit. But in the Ford administration, this is where Dick Cheney, and Donald Rumsfeld found their political starts, and they brought Garden Plot back. Over the next 30 odd years, they developed it through various forms under the Ford administration, the Reagan administration, and when they were out of office in various like think tanks and back channels of communication into something that became known as continuity of government. Continuity of government being effectively a suspension of constitutional rights in favor of an all-encompassing surveillance state that could track every purchase, track every movement, so on and so on. During the Reagan administration, they were very involved in Iran-Contra. They were very, very involved in, procuring these secret funds and secret channels with various groups. Part of this was the arming of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan at the time, including one group, headed by a little-known man called Osama bin Laden. You probably already know,
Whoa.
of course. This was disseminated quite a bit. But, under the aegis of the blowback theory, what you might not know is that continuity of government plans were finally finalized in the early days of the Bush administration. And when 9/11 hit, when the towers hit the planes, if you look at the movements of Cheney and Rumsfeld in particular, you'll notice particular patterns that suggest that they were moving to secret areas in which they could use phone lines, for one, that were under the aegis of this sort of parallel continuity of government structure that had pretty much no democratic oversight, no real accountability to Congress or even to the rest of the executive branch or the judicial branch or anything. This was entirely this sort of special branch of the executive branch that, in theory, was supposed to only be activated if a nuclear war went off. But the definition of the emergency that it was allowed to expand it became, widened really hard. Around 9/11, if you look at certain foreign policy movements and whatnot, you'll notice a few very, very interesting things. For instance, there was an FBI translator named Sibel Edmonds. After 9/11, a few months into 2002, she was suddenly fired from her job at the FBI translating documents from Turkish, and Persian mostly. There was a deficit of translators, and so the usual compartmentalization secrecy measures had broken down, meaning that she was one of the very few translators in the department at the time. And she got to see documents and piece together a picture that suggested that the CIA, for one, was still cooperating with Osama bin Laden months after 9/11 in the Caucasus for particular destabilization reasons. At the same time, there is ample evidence to suggest that there was. We have 20 minutes? Great. There
Well,
was
I
ample
don't.
evidence
But
to suggest that there was a program in around 2000, 2001 titled Able Danger under the aegis of, I think, the FBI, which was basically collecting info on various suspected terrorists. It was providing, like, I think judicially warranted wiretaps and whatnot, and it managed to identify almost all of the hijackers, including Mohammed Atta. And multiple different former FBI officers have said that when they were working on this project out of nowhere in like August 2001, I think, the heads of the department were just like, yeah, cover this shit up, trash it, destroy all the evidence. We don't want any records of this whatsoever. There was there were a few other things going on around the same time that just generally suggested that Cheney or Rumsfeld or both had, if not like perfect knowledge, because to be clear, Rumsfeld was in the Pentagon like at the time the towers hit, and he had to like fucking haul ass to get out of there. They probably didn't have like perfect knowledge of everything, but there was like enough evidence to suggest that they knew something. Probably like the most damning bit of it is that let me find like the specific.
I think, Angie, we got. I think the events have to fold forward because it looks like there's a. Looks like
Yeah.
we basically have to start
And
into the next mix as much.
yeah.
But the continuity of government stuff is always probably the most interesting things to actually dig around in is. So what were people really doing that day? And yeah, probably if you have like good resources for the chat, probably because I think
Yeah, I already I linked my Road to 9/11 Twitter moment earlier. I'll link it again.
cool.
Sick.
You can absolutely scroll through this. There's a bunch of like truly insane shit here.
I do. Before we close this out, I do want to do in classic like 16-year-old music fan fashion. I want to rate these fucking conspiracies on how much we like them, how much we think they're cool. Whoever wants to start can go ahead, or if not, I can start.
All right. I would say, Zeitgeist is like classic flavor. I'd give it the 8 out of 10 for being,
Yeah.
the not perfect. They made a lot of mistakes, but it's kind of the OG. Time Wave Zero theory. It's a good 6 or 7 out of 10. It's like Time Wave Zero itself is great. The modified version is just kind of there. Nuclear blast theory. It's explosive. It's compelling. There's not much to it. 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Occult angle. Another 5 out of 10. Lots of interesting stuff that ties into other greats, but not much there. Where do the towers go? Probably, I don't know, 6 out of 10. It's a little more interesting.
Yeah.
Holographic planes. That's a good 7 or 6 or 7 out of 10. And Hulk Hogan did 9/11. I mean, that one is Hulk Hogan is in the U.S.'s continuity of government documentation already. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that one's a good 9 out of 10.
It's an all-timer.
Revenge for
Yeah.
Postomania going under. Um, all
So yeah,
right. Who's next?
I'd say Hulk Hogan, yeah, that's a pretty 9 out of 10 one. I also want to give like the tiny nuclear bombs theory a nice 9 out of 10 just because, there's a bit of originality there. Like it's very, very difficult to
Mhm.
argue that that's the case. Um, but you just got to give him points for that. Um, just picking something that's like really hard to argue with a straight face while still being like plausible in a sort of dumb guy sort of way.
Yeah.
Like, I have to give like the holographic planes theory like probably like a 2 out of 10 just because like once you know somebody who believes in the holographic planes theory and you can't really get away from them, it like kind of loses like the charm of like holy shit, these people are insane. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh no, these people are crazy. I don't want to deal with this shit. um but I will say occult theory, yeah, I gotta give that like a 4 out of 10 just based on um based on God, like at the very least, suggest something cool, like
Mhm.
redo like the plot of Moonchild by Aleister Crowley instead of just like saying, you see, there's a 93 there, there's an 11 there, the towers are shaped like an 11, dude, it's two dicks,
Yeah.
or whatever.
It's like when Flavor Flav famously said on Flavor of Love, he called his dick the Twin Towers.
uh, I think from the ones that I can actually remember off the top of my head because of my memory, um, I guess Time Wave Zero Theory, just gotta give that one like 6 out of 10 just because like, I I'm still too fond of like McKenna's original Time Wave Zero formulation to really think of a deviation, but it is fairly interesting. It is fairly
Mhm.
novel to like argue for that. My favorite theory, the one I gotta give like an absolute 10 out of 10 though, is uh David Minetta's testimony. I think it's the first name is David. David Minetta's testimony that there was a young man who came into the Pentagon and said to Dick Cheney, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, he also said to Dick Cheney, do the orders still stand? And Dick Cheney turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Seemingly referring to what um, almost all evidence points is a stand down order. Basically, just don't shoot the fucking plane aiming for the Pentagon down. Let it hit.
It's fine, just let it go.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
all right. I think, okay, so for my choices, I'm gonna give occultism probably a 2 out of 10. I say that mainly because every time I look at conspiracy shit, I always see occultism try to wiggle its way in there somewhere, in some way or another. And you know, listen, you gotta sometimes you gotta let things have some air. Occultists can't
Yeah.
be in every single conspiracy. I mean, they can be, but it it kind of circles around the same stuff usually. Um, Holographs gets a 3 out of 10 because Hatsune Miku did it better. Um, uh, I'm just saying, Hatsune Miku, like have you seen those concerts? They're
Yeah,
fucking awesome.
totally.
Yeah,
It'd be cool to attend one in person. I wonder if
yeah.
anyone will happen near me ever.
Probably not, but it would be cool. Um, Time Wave Zero, based off name alone, that's already a 7. That was the garage scientist, right?
That's the Hutchison.
That's the
Hutchison.
Hutch. Oh yeah. That's
Oh,
where
yeah,
did the cares go? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a 7 out of 10 off of name alone. Oh, that's the guy that did a bunch of acid and was
Yep.
like, "Oh, hey, I came up with all these cool fucking numbers, guys. Check this out."
Yep.
Yeah, that gets a 7 out of 10. Um, Zeitgeist. That's like a nice, good home cooked meal. That's like a 6 out of 10 to me. Um, Fucking what am I forgetting? Where did the towers go? Oh, that's the turn metal to goop one, right?
Yeah.
That's a fucking
Yeah.
10 out of 10. I like that idea a lot. I like that you could just like shoot a beam at a whole tower that's like what hundreds of feet long, and it just slowly starts melting into goop. That's probably not what that was, but that's the way I interpreted it in my head, and I really like that visual. So I'm gonna
That
give that a 10.
that pretty much is totally what it was, to be fair.
Okay,
I
cool.
missed giving the Zeitgeist and Hutchison theories a rating, so because I forgot about them until the last second. So I will give the Hutchison. Yeah, that's a pretty high rating, at least an
Hmm.
8 out of 10, just because like magnets, fucking magnets.
Yeah, fucking
How do they
magnets.
work?
And I
And
always gotta support my like my garage scientists, my like Sid from Toy Story type motherfuckers who just
yeah,
can't keep their hands off of like machinery and like dangerous
hmm
chemicals and shit like that.
and
Um,
Zeitgeist, I'll give that one an 8 out of 10. Um, uh, a bunch of points for like Peter Joseph being a cool dude and being sick at the marimba and everything, and like the kind of weird, strange vibes
mhm,
that like it has like compared to like modern day media in general.
yeah,
Um, and docking off a couple of points just because like it can't be any higher than 8 just because like the Christ myth theory is so stupid.
yeah.
There was a guy named Jesus, I'm sorry. Like, regardless of
That
whether he was a son of God, he existed.
that dude was real. I saw him in Skate 3. Hidden tricks to fucking even flow. That dude rocks. Um,
Speaking of
what?
even flow,
Yeah.
hey, hey gamers,
Hello. Yeah, it
hello.
is time.
So,
Uh,
it, so guys, good morning. Welcome to 9/11. Today on 9/11, we're gonna be we're gonna be doing the new metal mix.
yeah.
It's are you guys ready for the new metal mix?
I'm
I thought
ready.
Because I'm ready.
Good.
I'm ready for the new metal mix, and I don't think any of you are. Um,
I've
get
never
ready.
been
Get ready
bored.
for 30 minutes of, well, specifically 26 minutes and 15 seconds of new metal mixing action, because we're going to take some old metals and turn them into new ones.
Beautiful.
Nice.
This is our new metal mix. See, you guys see that? The monster? That's like,
Oh,
dude, big stacks. It's been
by
nearly
the
2 years since this dude's last melt. Like this is a special time, right? Like he's opening his door
Mhm.
and he's gonna be mixing these metals.
Oh yeah. By the way, real quick, thank you, Angie. Thank you, Yule.
Thank
This
you.
was an awesome conversation. Thank you guys for leading me through that. I can't read,
Absolutely.
and I'm glad you guys can read for me.
Anyway, Stan Peter Dale Scott, don't know how he's still fucking alive after all these years, but I hope he lives to be 100.
Hell yeah. All right, everyone, have a happy Thanksgiving.
Re-elect Carter 1980. Good night.